It's 9 o'clock, July 30th, time for the regular board meeting. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call will show that all commissioners are present today. The first item we have on the agenda is to approve the agenda. Commissioners, staff, are there any changes we'd like to make on the agenda?
Looks good to me.
That's a motion to approve. Second?
Second.
Second. Commissioner Clark. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. The next item we have is public forum. Anybody wishing to speak at the public forum today? Those that are speaking have 3 to 4 minutes in which to speak, and they will talk about issues that are not on the agenda today. We will not take any action on those issues. However, we may recommend staff do some things. So if you're speaking today, please state your name, and then you may begin, and your address. Come forward, please.
My name is Renee Bjork, and I'm at 20584 County Road 18 in Bruton. And I'm here representing the citizens of Crow Lake Township this morning. If my family and I and our neighbors of 160 other folks around our township, and we hadn't gotten to everybody, hadn't spoken up with our petition to the EBQ, you and the Board of Commissioners were set to accept the Planning and Zoning Committee's recommendation for a conditional use permit for Anderson Partners sow confinement. That's frightening to us because of the way this proposal has been rushed through with mistakes, omissions, and really poor treatment of the public, who will be impacted most by this. Here's just one example. Environmental Services staff notes dated May 22nd describe a conversation that took place between Mr. Hyala and Miss Betty Jo Juten. It stated Mr. Anderson contacted area residents and no complaints were made against the feedlot proposal. Mr. Anderson came to my door but did not ask for either my husband or I. He did not speak with us. He did not inquire of our thoughts, nor did he make attempts to inform us about his project. The only other citizen Mr. Anderson spoke with was Brian Zimmerly, who relayed to me that he told Anderson he was not in favor. We have a full chronology of many more instances like this, and I'll be happy to share with you, but for now I'll move on. The EQB accepted our petition and assigned the MPCA to decide on an EAW because of the facts clearly showed serious problems with Anderson's plans. They applied for only 960 animal units, but have the capacity to house at least 1,000. On July 16th, I and Barb Son-Frank from LSP got a correction quote on the blueprint barn dimensions from Becky Schlorf, cutting the length of one barn by 40 feet. She said on July 17th that this info was available to the Public and Zoning Committee back in June. Why no correction until July 17th then? The capacity is still big enough to house at least 1,000 animal units. We've seen a blueprint that includes a pig nursery, but that wasn't in the original staff summary or original blueprints. Why is that? The DNR is concerned about this proposal. Grass Lake is a protected lake in a sensitive area where water quality and quantity are already in trouble. This sow confinement can store more than 4 million gallons of liquid hog waste. When that's spread in fields around people's homes, who's going to check their wells? In this sandy soil area, it will pass right through the surface into the lakes, streams, and possibly groundwater. Neighbors closest to this operation will be directly impacted. Some are already dealing with serious health issues that would be made worse by bacteria, microbes, gases blown about from barns into the air that they breathe. So to wrap this up, whatever the MPCA decides on an EAW, the proposal will ultimately be approved or denied by you, the board. You have jurisdiction. We citizens are asking you, our commissioners, to hear us and understand what is at stake. Several of us have called and asked to meet with you. Some of you haven't returned our calls, and honestly, that's hard to understand. Why should we accept that the environment, health, property values, and quality of life of many neighbors are not important compared to another's desire to make a profit? no matter what the consequences. I have here an illustration of all the property Anderson owns here. Why is it that we have to propose a large hog lot next to a protected wetland area and 12 properties? I can leave this here if you want to take a look at it. That's all I have to say for today. Thank you.
And board and staff, I think we got the MPCA looking at checklist, and we'll get their report from them and then proceed as we feel needed. Okay? Any questions? If not, anyone else wishing to speak at the public forum? Anyone else wishing to speak? If not, we'll move on to the next item. Consent agenda. Board members, we have 1 through 14. Any issues that you would like to draw for separate discussion?
I just have a question on number 7, probably for Mike. Is that a pass-through for the county, number 7?
Number 7 is this conduit debt, so it doesn't count against our debt. It's a little bit confusing, but it's a way for some borrowers to get better financing. So we do charge them for any of our time and costs for that.
So the county would be loaning them money, is that
No,
what that is?
no, the county doesn't loan them any money. They just kind of use our credit rating to get better financing.
Okay,
It's like
thank you.
we sponsor it, really,
Okay.
is all we do. And it doesn't even show up on our
Okay, thank you.
No,
financial statements.
no.
Okay, and I was actually going to pull item number 13, the Ellis property on Big Fish, but let me just comment about that instead. Board members, staff, that's a rather large improvement or area of construction on the shoreline. That's something we would not permit today. However, with the footprint that they have there, I want to applaud the Ellises by making a selection of putting some pervious pavers, which is going to reduce the amount of runoff in that area. So, and then staff, as far as the follow-up on that, I'd like to make sure that, that does happen so that we see that, that has happened. Also, I want to applaud the Ellises for maintaining the other half of their lot is left undisturbed. And so that's an asset to what they have going on, considering the size of the project. So with that, I'll look for a motion to approve all 14 items.
I want to pull number 5,
Okay, we'll pull number 5.
and then I'll have comments on after the approval on other items.
Okay. Well, then let's see, are there any others to be pulled? If not, is that a motion to approve all but
Yeah.
5?
I'll second.
You got a motion and a second to approve all items on the consent agenda except number 5. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All those pass.
Number 5, how do we set, okay, the value that we're relying on for that is set by what? Assessed value? What?
Number 5 is tax forfeited property that have been around for a little while. So they're like little slivers and kind of odd shaped pieces that are non-buildable. So I think all the properties, or most of them, have a set value of like $50. So the purpose is really to get them into.
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah, private
We
owner.
have had it in the past where we used numbers that wouldn't attract attention from buyers, but as long as, I'm totally in favor of these weird tracts. They're tax forfeited for a reason, usually because they're undesirable. So the idea that we shoot for the moon on value, now I want to see minimum pricing. So if you're doing that, Randy, I think that's great, and I'll move number 5.
Second.
And a second, Commissioner Clark. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
And does anybody know what the time is on number 4 of that event? Is that a daytime thing, or what is it?
I'll look to Tammy. It's an afternoon.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, we'll go ahead and recess the regular meeting. We'll move on to Human Services.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning.
Members of the board, Melissa Huberty, I'm the Human Services Administrator, and I have only 4 consent items today. They're items D1 through D4 on pages 305 through 307, and I am available for questions should you have them.
Questions on the Human Services consent agenda? Okay.
I would like to, on that one, pull number 3. We're attempting to appoint somebody to a board that does not live in our county, and I'm opposed to that.
Oh, okay. Then is that a motion to approve to all the others?
I would move to approve the others.
Second.
And a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Let's talk about number 3.
Okay, number 3 is an appointment to the Community Corrections Advisory Board of a person that does not live in Stearns County. Now, I'm all for people being involved with county government, but the county government you should be involved with is the county that you live in. And this person does not live in Stearns County. I realize the person works in Stearns County, but on the application, it even says Commissioner District. And so that's something that should be abided by. Is the person wants to be involved with county government, should be involved with the government that they actually live in.
Mr. Chair. And Commissioner Merkin, it was because in general, I totally agree with you. When I first saw that, it was like, oh, but it is the education representative. St. Cloud District 742 is the biggest school district in this area. This person has done a lot of work in Stearns County. And I think when we've had some other community representatives, they have not necessarily lived in our county. And this is once again one of the challenges of having 3 counties and a city, or in this case, a school district. And the school district does predominantly, its students are in our county. So like I said, I totally understand and appreciate your concern. In this case, I think it's important that the school district gets to pick their representative, though. And he's a good one. He will actually be a good, I think, go-to person for some of the work that this particular board has been working on.
I think we should, in this case, do like we did with the Sauk River Watershed District, is to put this out and encourage people to apply that do live in meet that requirement of living within the county. We start pointing people to different positions here. We're setting a precedent.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I can just add that we do have other members in our Human Services Advisory Council that are not citizens of Stearns County, and that's because in the bylaws, we need to have people in certain spots of service representation throughout. So we do have others on our boards currently that are not Stearns County residents but have a strong presence of service. And we look for that for people who are actually serving the people of Stearns County, and that's where this person would fit.
Were those people appointed by this board?
Correct. Correct. Yes.
Well,
Yes.
I'm still opposed to that. I think that's something we should remedy.
Okay. Commissioner?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Melissa, is it, like, I think my district had an opening is this would fill the one that's missing then?
Correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
Because I think that was put out or noticed,
Yes.
and I don't think anybody
Yeah.
applied.
And Mr. Chair, Commissioners, we do try to do that. We usually speak with the commissioner if it's your district specifically or in your area. Other than that, we try to do a lot of advertisement, trying to get folks to be involved. Many times these positions can go vacant for a while sometimes if we can't get people to be interested in the work.
I'll move approval. And again, just recognizing the concern that Commissioner Mergen's brought up.
Yeah, and I'd be willing to second that, just with a comment too, that, I sit on, this committee, and, it's a group of diverse individuals who basically are, in my opinion, lending advice to different departments in the area, to help facilitate issues and make changes. So I'm concerned like Commissioner Mergen, but, being on this committee, don't feel this would be really overstepping or intruding on, any issues I can see. I mean, I'd gladly accept an appointment from District 5 if we can get one, but
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
Have you attempted to get somebody from District 5?
I checked
To
around
apply?
and, you know, what do we meet? Is it six times a year?
Yes.
You know, and usually it's during the day, so it's not, it's one of those boards where it
Early
just seems like
mornings.
it's kind of difficult to.
It meets at 7:30 in the morning.
Yes.
Commissioner Morgan, I appreciate your concerns. I too, it's best if we have, representatives from the county. It's best if we have a diverse representation throughout the districts. However, also I agree that, having expertise, in particular this area from the school district, is a considerable asset as well. So I'll call the question. Oh, did you have one?
Yeah, are there any education people from the rural areas of the county on that board, represented on the board? Because I
I'm
see the
not
rural areas being slighted a lot in a lot of different areas.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, we do have folks who are in the service areas, like working with people with disabilities, for example, and other like service venues, as well as people with lived experience.
And Mr. Chair, Commissioner Morgan, I've actually been pleasantly surprised how many rural people we have on our boards and commissions. And I will say, as one of two females on our comprehensive planning steering committee, sometimes we've got some boards and commissions that are a little maybe lopsided in that way, among other things. But I think if we keep working on making sure we have diverse representation, whether it's age, whether it's race and ethnicity, gender, geography, that's really important. And having smaller businesses as well as community service people, that particular board really does have a nice mix of people, and it's a lot of staff people on it too.
That's correct.
And I had one individual involved in education in the area here, wants to be a board member or a commissioner member to some capacity and help the county. But the morning meetings and day meetings precludes that because they're at school, so they're looking for some evening appointment. So, I know that can present a problem because they would like to be in both places, and obviously they want to do their job as well.
May I make a suggestion? Would the commissioners be okay if we delayed this for 30 days and just to give one more chance to see if I can find?
I move the table.
Well, we've got a motion on the table first.
Right. Actually, we have a motion on the
Yeah.
floor. We have a
Table.
motion and a second to vote. So I
Yeah,
think you
right.
actually have to do
Motion
that
to
one, has to
table
be
takes
striked,
precedence.
and then you can table it if it
But
goes
needs a
down.
second. So you have to have a second on your table.
I'll second the table.
Okay. Okay, we got a motion, a second to table. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. It's tabled. Okay, we'll move on to the next item. Well, we're done with human services. Okay, we're done then. Okay,
All right, thank you.
okay. Who's got this next one? Administration? Mike, is that you?
Is this Micah? Is Micah next? Yeah. The Micah team is here.
Yeah,
Okay,
we've got the victims.
all right.
I'm sure Keith will introduce everybody. Mr. Carlson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Williams. As indicated, I'm Keith Carlson. I'm the current Executive Director of Minnesota Intercounty Association. Sitting next to me is going to be my successor as of this Friday when I'm retiring, Matt Mossman. And he'll, if the board will permit, will make a few introductory comments regarding himself at the end of our presentation. Then also with me then are Steve Novak, who's going to follow me on the agenda, and Carly, and then I will have a few closing comments to cover the human services area and sort of the broad budget outlook for the future before Matt makes his introduction, if that's all right. So to start out with, I'm going to sort of give an overview of the big picture of what happened this session, its impacts on on Stearns County before turning it over to Steve to talk about the transportation area. So this was really a pretty good session for counties in all areas except one, that being transportation, which Steve will cover. For 2020, Stearns County just received certification of its county program aid for that year and should be a $1,121,000 increase, so that's obviously good news. In the area of cost shares, we both received some good and bad news. The good news actually offset the bad news going into the future. There is a new 25% cost share relating to the supervision of civilly committed sex offenders who are discharged into the community, but that's offset by some other savings in other areas that I'll cover towards the end of our presentation. Like all employers, we avoided a new payroll tax for a state-paid sick and family leave program that would have been 0.6% of payroll if that had gone forward. Due to the repeal of what was the scheduled sunset of the 2% provider tax for the Healthcare Access Fund, there's no threat of medical assistance costs, a substantial portion of which is currently funded by the Healthcare Access Fund being shifted onto us, or for cutbacks in the MinCare program that also receives some state funding. And finally, your commercial industrial property owners of properties over $100,000 in value can look forward to some relief in their properties because of a reduction in the state property tax. That statewide is about 1.6% overall. So I'm now going to turn things over to Steve to talk about the transportation area. As you know, nothing really happened in that area, but there were some provisions in current law that provide some additional funding. So unless there are questions for me, I'm going to let Steve talk.
Good morning.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, always good to be in Stearns County. Let
We
me just briefly take you through what did and didn't happen in transportation. I'll break it into a couple of parts. At the end of the regular session, there was no agreement on a budget, including transportation as it relates to general funds. When the special session was concluded, there was an allocation of $93.5 million to transportation. None of it went to roads and bridges. Most of it went to trying to resolve this ongoing issue with MNLARS. And the way it broke out was $55.6 million has been set aside for what will be this new private contract with a private vendor to help get this thing figured out. You may recall that the new governor sort of offered that as a concession to the Senate Republicans, that he would give their idea a try. And that did seem to help break loose some other things in the overall budget. Along with that $55 million, there was an additional $13 million that was set aside to help pay back some of the deputy registrars for the losses that they incurred as a result of the problems with the system. And then the final piece of that money went to Metro Mobility, who now has a separate line item on the budget, got $23.19 million. The best way to understand, I think, what did and didn't happen in the long-term funding area, which we all have spent a lot of time on over the years, is the governor came off the election having campaigned for a gas tax, tab fee, so on and so forth. There was a new majority in the House who basically agreed with him, and they essentially coupled up, and the House did pass the bulk of his program. The Senate, who was not up and who had done substantial work in this area from their point of view in 2017, and had initiated this new concept from their point of view that we should be spending more general funds on transportation, essentially took a lock and hold type negotiating position, which truthfully was extremely successful. I would say in all the major categories of dispute and debate in transportation, the Senate position won. So as Keith referenced, what that meant was, in the end, there was no gas tax increase, there was no tab fee increase, there was no sales tax, there was no bonding bill, which also meant that there was no money for wetlands, which is an issue that will be in front of you. However, in current statute, based on the 2017 work that the legislature did, there will be some increases in 3 areas. The first one is the sales tax on auto parts, which was the centerpiece of the legislative position in 2017. That'll go up about $114 million. In the leased vehicle sales tax, there was in 2017 the addition of this small bridge program, and that will see increases of 13 and 14 million. And then there was trunk highway cash built into the statute as it relates to corridors of commerce, and that leads to a $25 million per year increase for that program over the next 2 years. On policy issues, I'll just highlight a couple. The one that's going to take effect this week, handheld devices, phones and cars and so forth. And work zone safety was a major issue, and the ditch mowing issue that you've spent some time on, that moratorium is extended 1 more year. And then as we look to 2020, I think there's a great deal of expectation backed up by some real substance that there will be likely a major bonding bill that will include a major transportation provision. And there may be some substantial work done between the administration and the Senate with the House to try to find some other revenue increases that do not include a gas tax. I would expect that work to happen. Whether the result occurs is a matter that will have to be decided. And then the last thing I just want to mention is, I think Jody, your engineer, who was here earlier, back there, I just want to point out the good work that she has done for our organization that I also know she does for you. And we value her participation in our committees, and she does a great job. So I would conclude with that.
She won't shut up.
That's good, we get things done.
I would have one suggestion for something that could increase the funding for roads and bridges is because we're always told that 100% of gas tax goes to roads and bridges, but yet the highway patrol is funded under roads and bridges. So if we would concentrate on maybe removing those things that are really not in construction of roads and bridges to the general fund, there would be a method of increasing the funding to actually building the roads and bridges. And that's not the only one. From my understanding, that's probably the most expensive one under there, that's hidden under there.
One of the privileges I have in my job is that I get to sit through all of the transportation hearings in the House and the Senate for years now. And I can say that you make a valid point. You may or may not be reassured by the fact that that point has been raised on several times, particularly inside the Senate committees led by Chairman Newman. You are right. There are a variety of other issues where the argument is made that these are dollars that could be diverted back to roads and bridges. So that debate is going on. Where it ends up, we'll have to wait and see. But just so you do know, that is an issue that has surfaced over the last year, and it is getting discussed.
Okay, thank you.
Just let me respond to that. But with those dollars, those dollars are to state patrol. So, we still have to have those dollars to state patrol. So they would be removed from the budget for roads and bridges. We'd still have the same issue because those dollars would be subtracted from that budget.
And I would say that you two commissioners have just summarized the committee debate of the last year.
Okay.
Where does the auto parts tax, where does that land? Does that land at the retail level, wholesale level? Where is that going to be implemented there? Do you know?
Well, it's collected as part of all the other sales taxes, and then the statutory language directs it to be used for roads and bridges and follows the formula.
It's collected at the retail level.
Retail, okay, good job. And then on commercial property, you talked about some relief, Keith. Is it commercial property in Lakeshore that have the state surcharge?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, that's correct. There's a state-imposed property tax that's separate from the local county, school district, township, or city.
Okay. Last time I looked, it runs about 17%.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, the rate on it is in that neighborhood.
Okay. Here in Stearns County, last time I looked, and it hasn't been for a long time, but the commercial property made up about 22% of the total, and property tax collected from those properties is about 44%.
Sounds about right.
Okay, so, commercial properties are getting some relief. It's timely, very timely. But, I don't know, what's that old saying about that really smart French guy explaining to the king about taxation, that the art of taxation was to pull the most down out of the goose with the least amount of hissing.
Mr. Chairman, if there are no other questions, then I'm going to turn things over to Carly to cover the corrections and public safety area.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I'm Carly Stark and I cover public safety. And I'll give you the bad news first. Unfortunately, county probation funding did not come through this session. The subsidy had no increase for inflation. That's for Community Corrections Act counties such as Stearns, and also for county probation officers. The other thing that did not go through is the emergency management readiness grants. Now, the good thing about the process for that is that it got all the way through to the omnibus budget, which is farther than emergency management grants have gotten before. So there is some hope that those can move forward in future sessions. One positive thing is that the Juvenile Detention Alternatives Initiative was funded. They received $500,000 for staffing and community grants for each year of the biennium. The disaster assistance contingency account was replenished with $20 million out of the transportation omnibus bill. Two policy things that went forward were a change in sexual assault reporting. Now victims of sexual assault can report the crime in any county within the state. That makes it extremely important for law enforcement agencies to have protocols for transferring the investigation of those sexual assaults to the proper county so that it can be charged in the right jurisdiction and hopefully result in a conviction. A change to inmate transfer procedures was approved. Previously, in order to transport an inmate, you had to have an officer of the same sex if the ride was longer than 100 miles. They changed that to allow for transportation if the squad car has an audio and video capabilities. And in practice, what that means is that female deputies will be able to stay on the road because they won't be taken off of their road shifts to constantly transfer female inmates. So I think that is a good thing for counties.
So your area then covers the funding, for example, for prisons?
Yes.
Okay. I'm a recovering prison guard. It was back in the 70s, you know. But back then we thought being a guard was dangerous. No, it really is. How much can you, even though it's beyond the scope of county government, can you recall by chance funding approval for more staff?
There was funding approval for more staff. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but I think it was between 75 and 100 new guards per year.
Okay, for the whole system?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
And I do know the Department of Corrections had a shortage of guards, like they weren't able to hire people. So they've been implementing some changes to attract more candidates to make sure that they are fully staffed.
Job sucks, you know, so, yeah.
Commissioner, just a question, in your opinion then, is it because of the facilities? Is it because of the training, or is it the inmates are more aggressive and?
Oh, yeah, I mean, you know, you're not dealing with Rhodes Scholars, okay? And so, as a result, and some of these folks, even the inmates that are still in their teens have a decade of criminal history. So, and with the ever tougher crime laws, the jails are, the county jails are tend to run at capacity. So the state system gets the really tough nuts, and that's a challenging job. 55 retirement, but is that enough to really attract folks. So, yeah.
We'll move on. Anything else?
No.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, then I'll close up here before we give Matt an opportunity to introduce himself. Nancy Selesky is not with us today, who covers Health and Human Services today because of a meeting obligation in the other portion of the state. So I will cover the Health and Human Services, and there's lots of good news in this area. So I'll just mention the one piece of bad news in this area, and that's no additional funding was provided for the child care assistance programs whatsoever. So that's a major concern, particularly for greater Minnesota, where there's a significant shortage of those facilities. In terms of the good news, there have been a number of them, many of which our organization and Nancy have been intimately involved in. First of those is county appeals regarding discharges from the Anoka Regional Medical Treatment Center, where basically all of our individuals who are arrested but not found competent for trial are sent for treatment, as well as discharges from community behavioral health hospitals. $582,000 was appropriated each biennium to deal with the issues that we frequently face, where we get a call from DHS, your Human Services Department, or corrections, that these individuals no longer fit our criteria for hospitalization, and you've got to do something for them. That's particularly problematic when we receive that message on Friday afternoon, and we have to scramble to find a place. So both the money as well as a reporting obligation that's imposed on the agency to report on efforts to reduce those sorts of situations will occur. Another good news is that now the sheriff is allowed to share data on those inmates who possibly need post-release chemical dependency or mental health treatment. The window for this is very narrow. If the former inmate declines that treatment, the data on him or her has to be deleted or eliminated on the social services side within 15 days. There's additional state funding for mobile crisis services for the mentally ill. That was a restoration for something that was cut back in the prior biennium. As I said, we did get a cost share on the 25% for those who are provisionally discharged from those who are civilly committed for sex crimes. That's going to cost us about $3.5 million. But more than $18 million of savings will accrue due to shifting the costs, certain chemical dependency treatment costs, away from the counties back to the state. Big factor for a number of counties was elimination of the 20% withhold from those counties that fail to meet performance standards for their child protection services. Coming with that is that there was funding provided for training at what's called the Child Welfare Treatment Academy. That's being facilitated through the U of M. There's a substantial increase in the number of beds that will be provided for the psychiatric residential treatment facilities for children. And then $20 million was appropriated for service delivery transformation and systems modernization for the Department of Health. You probably are aware that the MFIP grant, after a number of years, will be increased by $100 a month. Finally, in the opioid area, there will be a new fee imposed on the industry that will raise a projected $42 million. The monies or the yield from that fee will become available next year, and a portion of that, $16.3 million, will be distributed to the counties and tribal social services to provide for child protection for those children that are affected by the abuse of their caregivers. With that, then, the only other thing I wanted to touch on is kind of what's the fiscal outlook for the state. You may know that when the legislature prepares its budget each biennium, they're not only doing it for the immediately coming 2-year period, they also have to project that into the next biennium. So essentially 4 years, but the rules are a little bit different. The rules are that you take into account inflation on the revenue side, you ignore inflation on the expenditure side, and the import on that I'll touch on shortly. But since that budget was prepared, we have received some good news. The state's revenue collections were running substantially ahead of forecast for the fiscal year that just ended on June 30th. Approximately $600 million flew into the state's coffers, and that will have some beneficial effects, but it's not necessarily going to be good news for the subsequent biennium, and I'll explain that shortly. Okay, so I've prepared this chart that shows expenditures and revenues in the biennium that just ended, the 2018-19 period, the current biennium that began on July 1st, 2020 through 2021, and then finally I missed the last column should read 2022 through 2023 rather than the 2020-23. You'll see that revenues basically go up throughout that period, but it's worth noting that the state's revenue growth is slowing. And so the issue with that revenue over forecast is whether that's one time or whether it's permanent. The guess of the Department of Management and Budget staff right now, based on their discussions with other states that have seen the similar phenomena, is much of it is one time in reaction to the federal tax changes that changed taxpayers' behaviors with regard to when they make their final income tax payment, because the ratio of individuals who will itemize versus claim the standard deduction is changing substantially. There's no longer an incentive for many taxpayers to pay that before the close of the tax year. And so they think they saw a huge inflow in the April figures that showed on the prior page. And also they think there was substantial capital gains realizations. Up until recently, the market reached a high last fall, and they anticipate that many people may have taken those gains or may have taken them in December, like I was forced to do when the market was going in the tank and I had stop loss as on several of my stocks and mutual funds that got executed in the week before Christmas. On the expenditure side, you'll see that growth is occurring as well, but again, as I said, this 4.9% does not take into account inflation. If inflation was included, this 50 million or 50 billion figure would be nearly $2.7 billion higher. They simply do not have the resources to meet that under current projections. I expect the 2022-23 revenues to increase some when the November forecast, which is the next official forecast, will be released, but it's unlikely, in my opinion, to be enough to offset that. Consequently, they have a hole in the budget. They already have a hole in the budget if you look at what's called the structural balance, the difference between current revenues and current expenditures. They're basically spending down a portion of the state's fund balance, which is not necessarily unusual, but usually they dip into that fund balance in times of hard economic times. We're in probably the best we're going to see for certainly in the last decade or so. So that is of concern. How well prepared are we to deal with a recession that we know is coming? We just don't know when. I'll just point out the forecast does assume that the economy is declining, but that there's not a recession in it. So with that, unless there are questions for myself, I'm going to turn things over to Matt, and then I'll just have a few closing comments.
Yeah, I have one question. Sure. This goes along with the no new funding for child care assistance program. I was wondering if you could update us on on the current status of the Department of Human Services daycare fraud investigation.
Mr. Chairman, that was just, Commissioner, that was just addressed yesterday. There is a individual or position within the department referred to as the Inspector General. For issues that are not possible to be made public under the state's data practices law, that individual who held that position on a permanent basis was suspended this past spring. And the investigation is apparently still in process, and we won't know the outcome of that unless some discipline is imposed. Because that individual has not been available to oversee the program, the acting Commissioner of Human Services just appointed a new individual to, at least on a temporary basis, take over that function. That individual is the Public Safety Director for, I believe, the city of New Brighton. And so I think they're on the job already. So I think, as you probably know, there have been instances of fraud in the program, and one of the issues that has been identified by our legislative auditor is that there has not been sort of a systematic or a IT kind of related way to identify those instances of fraud. And so hopefully those are one of the issues that will be addressed with the new occupant, the new administration of the agency.
Thank you.
Other questions?
If not, if I can turn things over to Matt to introduce himself.
Mr. Chairman and members, it was nice to meet you earlier, and certainly always good to get out around the state. So happy to be here in Stearns County this morning. Just a little bit about myself, because no one wants to hear my whole history. You don't have time for that. But a few things from my background, just so that you know kind of the perspective that I'll be bringing to the role of executive director, a few roles that I've been in. So I'm new to this role, but I've been around the Capitol for a while. I was a fiscal staff doing property tax work for the House of Representatives. So I worked for the House of Representatives at the time that Commissioner Clark served in the Senate. I was the chief fiscal analyst for the State Senate, so worked on putting the entire budget together for on behalf of the Senate, and since then been in a number of administrative roles in the executive branch, Deputy Commissioner of Revenue, and most recently Commissioner of the State Department of Administration. So just personally, I'm someone who's a pragmatic problem solver, and so really looking forward to being in this role. And no one knows better than you all that county folks are on the front line of administering a lot of these state programs and making sure that the world for people who live in the state of Minnesota is functioning well on a day-to-day basis. And so I really look forward to not only reacting on a policy level, but really trying to draw on that experience from the MICA counties to help be proactive in working with legislators and other policymakers to help shape legislation going forward too. So happy to answer any questions, and glad to be here.
Questions for Mr. Mossman? Lee?
You described yourself as a pragmatic problem solver, so I take it you're not an attorney?
Or a realtor?
Mr. Chairman and Commissioner, I'm not an attorney. I get accused. I've written the law, even better. So yeah, I used to joke that it was more fun to write the law maybe than to practice the law. So no, not an attorney.
And also, do you hang out with economists?
I have on occasion hung out with economists. Yes.
You have. Oh, God. I used to tease Keith about that back when I was even more obnoxious. But, okay, well, we'll approve of bringing you on board.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just make some concluding comments, I do want to thank Stearns County for its continued membership in the association. I do want to particularly recognize Commissioner Clark and Commissioner Lenzmeyer, who represent you on the board. Lee has basically served on our board, on our executive committee for much of my tenure, so I've enjoyed his company throughout that. Also want to recognize your staff in addition to those who have already been recognized. Michael Williams supervises an extraordinary staff. I know Randy participates in our fiscal officers committee, for an example, and his input has been extremely valuable, as well as the rest of your staff throughout my tenure. So thank you very much.
Don't forget brilliant leadership. We're humble, but my God, we're good.
Well, we appreciate the partnership and we'll look forward to
Yeah.
continued cooperation.
Yeah, if it worked as well as it did with Keith, it was terrific.
Good, thank you.
And I've already gotten a chance to say this to you, Keith. Thank you so much for your leadership,
Yeah.
your ongoing work in the state. It really has made
Yeah.
a tremendous difference, as well as everybody else who works with Micah. And having known Mr. Mossman for a while, I've seen that pragmatic creativity in play, and think as long as you keep working with us, we're going to get some good things, and especially Commissioner Lenzmeyer. No, it's a really good relationship, and Mike is really
Yeah.
is such an important part of making state government work for our counties and the people we serve. So thank you.
So thank you, Keith, and welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Go on to the next item on the agenda.
Mr. Chair, your next item is the Minnesota Counties Insurance Trust.
Okay.
Membership or member report. And I see we have Robin Sykes, the executive director here, and Tom Supas, our member consultant, and Tyler Trickle, our risk manager, is here as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, good morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, thank you so much for the time on the agenda here this morning. I really appreciate it. My name is Tom Supas, so I am now Stearns County's MCIT risk management consultant. I'm excited about that. There's been some changes. Jane Henniger has retired, and so now I have the privilege and the honor to work with Stearns County. Been doing so for a little over a year now. Earlier this year, we had a great training program, Protect Your Property, making sure that all of Stearns County's property was appropriately scheduled and adequately valued. And we had Tyler and Marlis and administration and many directors and staff. It was outstanding. I really enjoyed working with staff. Well, this is my first board report to the Stearns County Board. This is the 2019 MCIT report, our annual report, or semi-annual. We provide this report every other year to really coincide with county elections, keep you updated on MCIT news. With that, welcome to new Commissioner Clark. Welcome.
It's good to
And
see
also, a very special thank you goes to Stearns County Auditor Treasurer Randy Schreifels. Randy is also a member of the Minnesota Counties Intergovernmental Trust Board of Directors and has been so since 2013. So thank you so much, Randy.
Thank you.
All right, well, Ray, respecting your time, I'm just going to touch on some of the highlights of our report, some of the activities from 2018, and some of the updates for 2019. Now, as you may already know, MCIT, we're not an insurance company. We're a risk-sharing pool and a joint powers entity. We provide property liability and workers' compensation coverage. We also provide risk management and loss control services that would help our members on a day-to-day basis. We try to specialize in cost-effective coverage that meets our county members' needs, but also those risk management and loss control services to really help our members on a day-to-day basis. MCIT, we provide coverage for 81 of the 87 counties in Minnesota, really all but 6 of the large self-funded counties, Hennepin and Ramsey, Anoka and Dakota, St. Louis and Olmsted counties are the 6 counties that are not in the trust. But the other 81 in Minnesota are, as well as over 380 affiliated members of counties, such as the Soil and Water Conservation Districts, historical societies, and agricultural societies and fair boards, other joint powers boards as well. So again, we have probably over 450, 460 members in MCIT. Just a little history, going back to the late 70s. Again, county commissioners were really having trouble trying to find workers' compensation coverage, primarily for law enforcement. Either there was no providers, or it was so heavily and highly priced they couldn't afford it. So commissioners decided, well, why don't we just pool our own monies and pay our own workers' compensation claims? So they did. So in 1979, MCIT was born. So this is a very a milestone year for us at MCIT. So now 40 years later, successful years, if I may, again, of managing risks together with our members. Some of the keys that we feel to some of those successes, again, is I think MCIT's dedication to really providing, again, and addressing the changing needs of our members, and especially our county members. But also, I think it's our members and their true commitment to, again, managing risks and controlling losses on a day-to-day basis. In addition, we feel, again, that just supporting those kind of loss prevention programs, mitigating claims together. Remember, we're kind of on the same team. Also to collaborate, when losses do occur, and unfortunately they do. And then fulfilling financial obligations to the MCIT. But we truly feel, again, it's the members. It's really their commitment that we greatly appreciate. Now, Stearns County has been a member since 1985. Because again, the workers' compensation program was so successful that in about the mid-'80s is when we added the property, the liability, and the auto coverage as well. And Stearns County came on board in 1985. All right, moving on. Let's look at the second page. Again, on the left-hand column, we'll start there on MCIT's rate history. You can see the past 5 years and 8 of the past 10 years. Actually, our aggregate property casualty and workers' compensation rates have either declined or remained steady. And in fact, since 2010, our aggregate rates for property casualty have decreased almost 31%. For workers' compensation, those aggregate rates, again, have decreased a little over 32%. Again, which we're all proud. Again, it's our members' commitment that has really made that difference. You can see that on the graph below, kind of how our rates have been declining. Now, again, remember, future rates are based upon past claim history. So MCIT, we stay fully funded. And again, we fund all estimated claim costs, which is one of the many advantages of being in a risk-sharing pool. Others are the similarity of exposures that counties have, the economies of scale, as well as this rate stability. It helps to kind of smooth out some of the peaks and valleys of some of the high catastrophic claims that can happen. And I think that we feel that rate stability helps our commissioners as you budget for future coverage costs. Look in the bottom of that column, let's look at dividends. Dividends are always kind of fun to talk about, probably everybody's favorite. Again, dividends, when they are returned in a standard insurance market, would go back to the stockholders. Well, with MCIT, those dividends now go back to our members and really ultimately the taxpayers. You can see in the green box, it talks about our dividends, that dividends reflect MCIT's past claim experience, but also the performance of MCIT's investments. Now again, MCIT, we can only invest really as counties can, and that's very conservative, and those rates have actually been decreasing in the past few years. And again, MCIT, you can only provide a dividend when it's actuarially sound and then fiscally prudent. Well, for 2018, the Board of Directors at MCIT provided a dividend in total of $11.75 million for the entire trust, or all members. And you can see Stearns County's check was a little over $300,000 in 2018. Now, just recently, the board has approved a 2019 dividend. So now the 29th dividend that is being provided by MCIT for a total of about of $10 million, again, for all members. And Stearns County's share or check would be around $230,000 coming up. You'll learn a little bit more about that here in the next couple of weeks. So again, congratulations with that. All right, moving on, let's talk about claims a little bit. So that's kind of in the center of the page. Frequency and severity, the top section is property casualty. Casualty are those liability type of claims. Again, the frequency is how many claims, severity, how much do they cost. So this is for the years of 2014 to 2018. Now this is all of MCIT, so MCIT as a whole, all members. You can see that auto is still leading in the most frequent and the most severe. Again, MCIT covers about 10,500 vehicles. And so as a result, that is a cost driver. That again, so a lot of our training programs focus right there. And again, general liability was second in frequency, and actually property was still second in severity. And some of those really relate to some of the storm claims and some of the high property claims there.
Tom, let me interrupt here.
Yes, Mr.
With
Chairman.
auto, what seems to be the largest number of claims? Where's the greatest liability there seem to be from?
I'm not in claims, but what I know, again, is just overall, again, whether it's in the sheriff's office.
Is it Sheriff's or Public Works or all combined, or?
I would say it's my understanding it's all combined, because again, all county officials that really, drive vehicles. But again, the sheriff's office, again, is 24-hour service.
We know we have good drivers though in the sheriff's department.
Absolutely.
As I look at the sheriff in the back of the room.
But they're dealing with
absolutely we do, right, Sheriff? Yeah.
Too many deer and poor drivers on the road.
Yeah, but they're dealing with bad drivers, yeah.
Yeah, that's just it. Again, hopefully some of these other law changes, hopefully will help. Yeah, the distracted drivers are really, it's the other person. All right, the center of the page really talks about workers' compensation claims. And again, the same frequency and severity, MCIT as a whole, so really all members, again, that 2014 to 2018 time period. Again, now you can see sheriff and highway actually lead in both frequency and severity. But again, as I mentioned, not too surprising with their 24 hours of service and some of their higher hazard occupations as well. Now, again, remember, MCIT, we don't experience rate for property, liability, or auto claims, so that doesn't affect the county's contribution rate. Workers' compensation is different. That does. It is experience rated. So again, all the frequency and the severity then of work-related injuries and illnesses can impact a county's contribution. Now, actuarially, they can determine what are expected losses for an employee classification groups, payroll within those classification, and have an expected losses of what's called an experience modification rate. The rate would be a 1.0 for expected losses and would be the base rate for workers' compensation. If losses come in more than expected, that actual experience rate goes up above 1, and so then actually increases the contribution. Or if losses come in below expected, actually those experience modification rate will be below 1 and have actually reduced contribution. Now you can see in the red box here, Stearns County for 2019 has an experience modification of 0.954. That's actually down from 2018, which is a 1.122. So congratulations. Again, that takes a lot of overall work from all the county staff. So again, great job there. You can see the previous years of 17, 16, and 15 as well. So now the 2018 claims are not calculated as a part of that 2019 mod. It's actually the 3 previous years. So 17, 16, and 15 are actually the years that make up that 2019 mod. Now, Stearns County is actually in its 9th year of assuming a high deductible program for workers' compensation claims. Now, they have a $100,000 deductible per claim and a $350,000 annual aggregate. Now, Stearns County has a risk manager as well as others on staff, again, with the sophistication to really take on a high deductible program like this, and really which significantly reduces that workers' compensation contribution rate and amount. And again, by reducing that again and having that kind of a reduction by actively participating really in the claims management process. So again, congratulations goes to Stearns County. All right. Moving on to the right-hand column, some of the coverage enhancements. Now, the MCIT Board of Directors is responsive to our members' requests, and there's been some coverage enhancements now as of January 1st, 2019. First one was a data compromise Cyber 1 coverage. Those limits were increased from $50,000 to $100,000 for each of the 4 coverage parts. Again, this is an emerging risk, and so it's just providing greater protection for our county members. In addition, the builder's risk sublimits were increased, so if the county is doing a remodel or an addition with a value of the project of $750,000 or less, again, there's automatic coverage. Now, if the project is valued greater than $750,000, then you would have to find that builder's risk policy outside of the trust. And again, that builder's risk policy is critical to protect that project, again, during that construction process. Next is liability for all endorsed drones. Now, the Sheriff's Office does have a drone, so prior to January 1st, 2019, only the Sheriff's Office for emergency operations such as search and rescue and others was covered by MCIT. Now, drones are becoming a more valuable tool. So as of 1/1/19, all endorsed drones for all county departments, for all uses, as long as it's owned by the county, operated by a county employee under FAA regulations, now has both property and liability coverage. Drones can be used for bridge inspections or land inspections, ditch inspections, and others. So it becomes a more useful tool. So again, coverage is now provided there. Electronic data processing equipment, again, is increasing on a daily basis. So they enhanced some of the coverage there as well as eliminated some of the restrictions. So again, enhanced coverage on electronic data processing. And then lastly, coverage for Class 3 dams, as defined by the Department of Natural Resources. So again, Class 3 dams are the less risky. In other words, so if there's a failure with a Class 3 dam downstream, there's really no risk to human life, to major transportation. It's really minor transportation roads and so forth. So those are now automatically covered. Where Class 1 and Class 2 dams, where there is risk downstream if that dam were to fail, is not covered by MCIT. And again, those would have to be covered outside of the trust. All right, moving on. Let's go to the last page. Let's talk about MCIT's programs and services here. First is risk management. And again, I enjoy working with county staff, responding to coverage questions, liability questions, as far as looking at what's covered and what's not covered. We can review contracts from a risk management perspective. We look to make sure, again, how does MCIT's coverage match up with that contract? Is the county agreeing to limits that MCIT does not have or coverages that MCIT does not provide? So that's the kind of feedback that we're going to provide, as well as looking at those indemnification statements as far as if something goes wrong, now who's paying or who's responsible for those, and again, to further try to protect the county. So again, willing at your beck and call for risk management services. Also loss control. Again, Stearns County has a very active safety program, working with our loss control consultants. One is Nick Lindberg. The other is Keith Turnus. Keith Turnus is a loss control consultant for law enforcement. So again, together with Tyler Marlis, again, and staff, working with Nick and Keith on the safety programs, the safety audits and reports, again, our OSHA requirements, evaluating, again, injury data analysis, ergonomics, and helping with safety committees. Again, Stearns County has a robust a program online with all the safety programs and so forth constantly being added here for county staff. Moving on to section in the blue column, some of our upcoming trainings. You can reach, and hear about all of our trainings at our website at mcit.org. Some of the workshops that I want to point out, there's a risk management workshop coming up September 19th, right here in St. Cloud. We'll be talking about contracts, open meeting law, as well as some other topics as well. So again, I encourage you to check that program out. Some of the other, again, we offer the ongoing patrol for the Sheriff's Office for peace officer accredited training offered through MCIT and the League of Minnesota Cities, the Sheriff's Association, as well as the Police Chiefs Association, again, for that ongoing training for our sworn officers. Stearns County is participating in that. It has 71 officers participating. Lastly, I want to talk about some of the defensive driving. Again, as we mentioned, auto is really a high claims driver. And so as a member of MCIT, you're also a member of the Minnesota Safety Council. They offer a defensive driving class, either a 20-minute online or a 2-hour on-site. Again, either passenger vehicles, buses or vans, or heavy trucks. It's available. Now, Stearns County actually does more and actually utilizes the Minnesota Department of Transportation also. So again, to supplement those programs, again, focusing in on drivers training to try to get all our county employees through their day. So hopefully there's not a property claim and a workers' compensation claim out of those crashes. So again, great focus on defensive driving. All right, moving to the gray box here, some of our awareness and prevention materials also on our website. And we're proud to say some of those are actually national award winning. So we're very proud of some of these. The new one here is a deer vehicle collision. Sadly, those happen in Minnesota. We're getting more and more. And again, to make sure that we don't have a workers' compensation claim out of that as best we can. There may be a property claim, but we don't want a workers' compensation claim. We don't want people getting hurt. So again, a great training program there. Some quick takes on safety. Again, those are mini take. Stearns County actually has a program like that already, which is your supervisor safety talks that you folks use. Again, very similar, just short little training topics. Again, we mentioned the law enforcement trainings we have, or the law enforcement safety officer programs. Ongoing Step Wisely, the slip, trip, and fall programs, again, is still a cost driver for visitors as well as employees. So again, getting in and out of vehicles, slip, trips, and falls, reminding us all to try to get through our day. And again, Stearns County is participating heavily in that program as well. Other programs, again, that Stearns, they had a specialty program for the tree crew, again, from the Hennepin County, again, to offer specialized training to try to increase prevention efforts. All right, let's move up to the green boxes. Let's talk about employee assistance program just a little bit. Again, this is another risk management effort, if you will, again, to intervene early. Through MCIT, there is an employee assistance program provided by Sand Creek, which is professional counselors to offer for all, again, elected officials as well as employees and all of their immediate family members. Again, up to 4 visits per issue. So again, it's helpful to provide. Again, life can pile up on us sometimes.
Is that unique to Sand Creek? I think we don't use Sand
No,
Creek.
you do. Actually, Stearns County does actually more. In addition to, they actually have a local employee assistance program, Vital Work Life, again, which provides some of your ongoing trainings and is available on-site and local here. Again, so both of those programs are available to Stearns County, and again, to supplement each other. And you can see in the dark green box, again, the EAP programs can help everybody get through their day, but also can help possibly on the employment issues to try to reduce possible grievances or lawsuits that come. So again, to help on the supervisory role as well. Lastly, I just want to talk about the commissioners and how much we appreciate what all of you do. Again, supporting all the safety initiatives, the return to work programs and the trainings that staff, we all greatly appreciate and know the impact that that has. Again, we thank you so very much for all of that. And again, engage MCIT whenever possible. Again, as far as coverage issues or contract questions, again, we're available. So with that, on behalf of the MCIT's Board of Directors and the entire MCIT service team staff, we thank Stearns County again for your ongoing support and participation in the MCIT program. That concludes our report.
Questions?
Yeah, thanks for the report, Tom. Just
Thanks.
one question, just for probably the general public. Do you know offhand what our annual premium is?
Do I know? I do not. I'm sorry.
I guess I don't know off the top of my head either what it is.
And again, we call it a contribution, but which is
Oh,
very
right.
similar to a premium. Yeah. So again, it's
I was just trying to put it in perspective.
From
Dividend.
the dividends and the
Yep.
amount in, amount back.
Mhm.
So that's, again, those are substantial.
Sarah, do you know what that is?
No, but I can go find out.
Okay, thanks.
After break.
Tom, all my years in government, when I first got in, I didn't know anything about risk management, nor did I care about risk management, but I obviously understand the importance of it and what it means to government. So it's not one of the sexiest parts of government, but I appreciate the work that you do.
Oh,
because
thank you
it's
so
important.
much, and we appreciate the work that you do and what staff does.
Okay, any other questions, Lee?
You already covered the area of largest claims and trends in claims. Is there an industry measure of the effectiveness of training? I know, I get your emails and I know you offer a bunch of it, and as you indicated in your report, that it's in a wide variety of areas. But is there a measurement or measurements other than the fact that if you have offered training, it goes down, you know, the claims in that area go down?
Well, there are metrics. Now, again, I guess MCIT, we're going to focus on those cost drivers that are really that where our members are experiencing claim activity or workers' compensation injuries or illnesses. So again, we're going to focus there, and those are really targeted, really interventions. Those could be measured as far as, again, so not everything is kind of in a control bubble, but there are other factors involving. But I would think those targeted efforts will make a difference.
Well, just the fact that claims are going down, I guess, is not a bad start. I guess, Randy, Robin, have you folks gotten into the area of losses related to electronic hacking? That's timely in our area right now. We get hacked. We are attempted to be hacked virtually daily. We've had some excitement here in the last 24 hours. What have you know, where has that discussion gone on the board level with staff?
Robin can help me out here on this, but we have talked about this a lot in the last 2 years. And as you saw, one of the changes has been an increase in that area. MCIT has had some claims in this area. I would have to say, though, some of those are relatively self-inflicted, where we have data practices, leaks, or problems. I don't know that there's been a lot of hacking costs of that sort, and I guess Robin can help me out there.
Last year we had, I think, 16 claims, and we were starting to roll out the cyber coverage. This year...
You're dealing with an old guy.
Please.
This is actually, I believe, our third year with the cyber coverage. Our first year, we did not see an awful lot of claims, Commissioner. In 2018, we saw about 17 or 18. This year, halfway through the years, those have doubled. The majority of the claims that we have seen have actually, when we start to look at the towers of coverage, have required the forensic work to actually see what has happened. Has it been an inappropriate release? Has there been lack of patches? The biggest thing that we have seen this last year has been the attempts to reroute the, what do you call them?
Website or something?
No, it's when you do the electronic deposits of individuals' paychecks.
Oh, yeah.
And we have had probably, I'm thinking, 22, 23 different counties report attempts where they will get a phone call and say, hey, or an email from somebody indicating, would you please send my direct deposit payroll to a new location? The county or the member, because this is not just specific to the counties, will reroute those, and then the people look at it and go, my check isn't in the bank. And we've had to track some of those back. So that has been a really big uptick in that. So we've provided some risk management advice specifically for counties. We pushed that out probably 2-3 months ago to HR, payroll clerks, and auditors, trying to say, hey, this is happening, and it's an alert. So those things happen routinely. Relative to your issue on training and the effectiveness, I think one of the biggest examples, and kudos to Stearns County in the fact that although you don't use our EAP, you do have that service and you use it a lot, because what we have found is that if we can keep the utilization pool wide at about 4% of people picking up phones and taking advantage of that counseling service, our employment and personnel related claims, we aren't seeing what we did. When we introduced that in 22 years ago, the purpose was we were seeing so much money being spent on those types of claims. We virtually see none of those claims anymore. And I think the biggest thing that we find is an advantage is that when we do a survey for people who have used that service, and I think you probably would see the same thing depending on how those surveys resulted, is that over the last few years we've had 17 or 18 people, which doesn't sound like a lot, say, had we not had access to this kind of resource, whether it's through this, Sand Creek or whoever you're using, we would have gone down the street and we would have either filed a lawsuit or started a grievance. And I think anytime we can prevent those types of conversations with the local attorney, we are saving an awful lot of money, which then I think offsets not only the cost of the contract, But as we talk about, greater Minnesota, it's getting harder and harder to fill some of these positions. So keeping morale up and people happy really is advantageous too, Commissioner.
Okay.
I appreciate the need for conservative investments. Would there be any merit in getting, I don't know if you need state legislation or whatever, but doing so using Minnesota Board of Investment people?
There was some conversation about 6-8 years ago when there was a talk about some counties being able to use, I believe, the for post-retirement, post-employee retirement programs, and using that the State Board of Investment. MCIT had looked at some of that. There had been some consideration. We don't really have that, but it was a discussion about legislatively, would that make some sense to broaden that? It was something that was discussed by the board. We have not revisited over the last few years, but I think there has been some appetite to continue to be conservative, recognizing this is the money of the counties and limiting ourselves to be basically a shadow or mirror what you are limited to. But again, Randy's on the board, and we can certainly raise those issues.
Well, it just seems, well, it's noteworthy, at least to me. I'm on the para board, and if State Board of Investment is appropriate for para, appropriate for police and fire, appropriate for teachers, this would seem to be appropriate for this. So, I don't know. Randy, I guess I'll have to trust your judgment.
Well,
But,
it's something we have considered both at Stearns and at MCIT. If it's some money that we're going to have sitting there for a long time, that may be appropriate, like a post-employment benefits. For MCIT, really it's operating money is what we're talking about, and I don't know if that's really appropriate.
In short term.
Right.
Okay.
And, we have been bringing down the fund balance. It was high, and that's a lot of the dividends that you've seen has been dropping that fund balance down. Now, we are going to be talking about what's the appropriate level for that fund balance in the future, but at this point, I don't know that there's really an opportunity to more aggressively invest.
Right.
So
And
we do use.
We have moved from a portfolio that part of it was actively managed to buy and hold, and we moved the entire portfolio about 15 years ago to being an actively managed portfolio because we were seeing much better returns as opposed to just buying our instruments and then just sitting on them. So we contract with a company called Galliard Capital Management, and they are handling those investments for us.
Okay.
Other questions? If not, again, thank you. Also, just with the staff, and I appreciate also having this information available to citizens and our staff too, when we can look at things, at how we're doing things, and if we can be more safe and prevent accidents from happening, that would be good too. So, yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you.
I see the next item we have actually is a break. Are we ready for a little break? Okay, with that, then we'll take a recess for about 5 minutes. Okay, we are back after a short break. We'll move forward with Public Works. Good morning, Jody.
Good morning, Commissioners, Mr. Chair, Jody Tyke, Stearns County Engineer. The Highway Department items begin on page 349 in your agenda packets. My first item is I'm asking the board to adopt a resolution prioritizing bridge replacement in Stearns County over the next 5 years. The reason for this resolution is twofold. First of all, MnDOT uses this to predict bridge funding needs over the next 5 years when they communicate with the legislature. The other reason for this resolution, why we update it every year, is a structure needs to be listed on the county's resolution to be considered eligible for either state bridge bonding funds or township bridge funding. This resolution does not obligate us to replace these. It does not obligate us to these years, but this is the county's, in our staff's opinion, priorities for replacing bridges over the next 5 years. So I'm asking the board to adopt that resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Okay, I have a motion and a second for the bridge repair and replacement. Any discussion? Just briefly, I was talking to Jody about this. You know, and with the discussion, I just want to appreciate the work that you're doing. You know, we have a good number of bridges, especially in the rural areas, and with the size of fertilizer trucks, peat trucks, grain trucks, you know, implements like that, staying on top of this is important. So I want to hopefully continue to do this and appreciate, you know, staying, you know, in tune with what's going on, especially in the rural areas. So
Thank you.
I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
For my next item, I'm asking the board to approve awarding the contract for SAP 073-592-006, and that's the Norway Road improvements in Avon Township. As you're aware, Avon Township received a local road improvement program grant. This is pass-through money, so we are the contract administrator for the township. They have paid for all engineering. They will have an engineer on site inspecting the construction. We simply make the payments and request the reimbursement for the township. Bids were opened on July 19th, and the low bidder was Minnesota Paving and Materials. They were 1.93% under estimate. I'm asking the board to approve awarding that contract to Minnesota Paving and Materials.
So moved.
Commissioner Clark?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Mergen. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
For my next item, I'm asking the board to accept drainage and utility easements granted to Stearns County along County Road 74 by both the Roger Pagansky Trust and Kenzie Investments LLC. This is something that is part of a subdivision the city of St. Cloud is requiring, because this is a portion of County Road 74 that will remain ours. The city wanted those easements granted to the county. The county attorney's office recommends that the county board formally accept and sign these easements. There would be a signature line for the county board chair and the auditor treasurer.
Motion on those easements?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
I have no miscellaneous unless the board has anything for me.
Questions? Lee?
Are you familiar with the Appian Way?
No.
It's a road in Italy that's 2,000 years old. Famous road. You know, that was built by engineers that didn't have degrees.
Speechless.
It doesn't happen that often.
Yeah, my son pointed that out. So, you know, you don't, you know, and okay, the reason my son would bring it up, we have terrific arguments and about going to college, but he's doing okay. Gets in trouble with the law a lot, but he's doing okay professionally.
Well, now we'll have to look it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Lee, I have driven it many times. Down from Oxford.
No
Yeah,
kidding?
Through the Alps and down to Rome. So,
Oh,
yeah.
darn.
Yeah.
See? Two experts.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, thank you, Jody.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll move on. Sheriff's Department.
She's going to start sending somebody else to the meetings pretty soon.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Hope you're all doing well today. I don't know how we're all so lucky to follow both MICA and MCIT, but here we are. We have a couple of issues on the agenda today. The first being, I'm going to take these off so I can read better, the grant opportunity through the Minnesota Department of Public Safety, Office of Traffic Safety, which in turn is funded by the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration. If you recall, about a year ago, back in May of 2018, we came to the board and presented this same opportunity. At that time, we were requesting permission to apply for the grant, which we subsequently did. However, we were not fortunate enough to receive it. This year, the grant came out a little bit late. We had a short time frame to apply for it. So at this point, I'll apologize and say that we did apply for it without coming to the board to receive that authorization. And as luck would have it then, we were lucky enough to receive it this year. So this is for a 2020 DWI officer funded by a grant. The focus of this grant is to dedicate an officer to full-time DWI enforcement in the county. And the grant would be from October 1st of 2019 to September 30th of 2020. The total amount of the grant is $104,747. So we're presenting this opportunity to the board for approval, we hope, for both the to accept the grant and fund this full-time DWI officer, and at the same time, also we'd like to then fill that opening that this grant opportunity would create.
Okay.
I'll move that with a comment.
Okay, I got a motion.
I'll second that with a question.
And I have a question too.
Okay.
I also will have
Okay.
some
I
statements.
might have a question too, depending
Okay,
on the questions.
all right, good.
Well, good.
There we go.
Well, we know what the amount is and we know what it's for, but what does the program or whatever you're doing actually entail? Sounds good, but, you know, what the devil's in the details.
Sure. If you're familiar with the City of St. Cloud Police Department, they have had an officer filling this position for about the last 3 or 4 years. So really it is an officer that's dedicated to conducting traffic stops and DWI enforcement during the hours and days of the week that studies would show that this offense is most often occurring. So the officer does only DWI enforcement through traffic stops. They don't handle any other calls unless it would be a really large emergency where they respond to something. But they are full-time dedicated to DWI enforcement, and that is it.
I know when you do those the public announcements on when enforcement is enhanced, you know, what is peak time? You know, I mean, after the bars close, I would imagine, but what else?
Really, peak time is anywhere from Wednesday through Sunday night after 5 o'clock in the evening till about 2, 3 in the morning.
Okay.
And then that picks up again, obviously, on Thursday, Friday, Saturday nights.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where this officer works on. It's not a day shift officer. It's not an officer that would work past 2 or 3 in the morning. It's focused on those high incidences of DWI occurrence.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, I get my question or request would be, I guess, if you'd come back like in 6 months, maybe just give an update. You know, if this is approved, just maybe see, you know, where it's going, and then hopefully it moves us from 6th further down the list.
Absolutely.
My question relates similar to Lee's question as far as usage of the officer, and perhaps a suggestion or an idea. What we're looking at particularly peak times, and we have one person in that position. Is this specifically for one person or one position? In that, would we get perhaps better mileage out of having 2 people half-time on this, and saying in the rural areas, in the close areas to St. Cloud, at those peak times, so we don't have just one officer that's doing the DWI, that we actually have 2, and then again working at the peak times, also maybe looking at times when there are festivals and needs for maybe greater enforcement at one time. So I'm just suggesting that if that's possible, would we get, better coverage with the DWI situation? I don't know.
We'd have to go back and take a look at that, and Lieutenant Hemish is the one who submitted for the grant. I'd have to talk to Lieutenant Hemish and then also our grant coordinator to see.
You understand the concept I'm suggesting?
I do. You'd be splitting maybe devoting 2 people to it and then splitting the salary that way.
Right.
I'd have to see if that's something that the grant had envisioned or would allow for.
And that
so
also,
right now, I don't know the answer.
During vacation times, we would have still one person in that position, or when person's on leave, we still have one person in that position. So just a suggestion.
Yeah, I have several comments here. This is on page 381 is where I'm looking on the board packet, which has the rankings of the counties, and it's entitled The Worst Alcohol-Related Counties. And this is really, really a deceiving, of whatever you call it here, but I finally figured out how they're ranking it, and it's by the second last column, where it's entitled All Drunk Driving Related Deaths and Alcohol-Related Suspected Serious Injuries. Who decides what's suspected would be one of my questions. And there's probably questions you can't answer. I don't know who does this ratings, where this comes from.
It would come from the Office of Traffic Safety, so I couldn't give you a concrete answer, but I can certainly speculate that they're drawing their data off of crash reports that deputies and officers submit. So if that officer, when he's completing that traffic form, checks that level of injury, that may be why they're referring to it as suspected serious injury.
The other thing as to how they're ranked, you could almost go by the populations of the counties, largest counties in Minnesota, and just go right on down. This should not be, it's something like this. Let's say there are 400 traffic deaths from automobile accidents in Minnesota, and there are 20 deaths from snowmobile accidents. Therefore, the conclusion is it's more dangerous to drive in an automobile than on a snowmobile. And that's what's going on here, where this should be ranked by population per 1,000 or something like that. Because Hennepin County is going to be the most dangerous one every year, the way this is ranked. So, coming from an old statistics.
Oh, he's a geek. He's amazing.
It should be by population or something. This is really, really a deceiving.
And I think the history of this, when these stats come out every year, I think people have made that observation every year as well. And
because
I can't
Stearns County
speak as why they don't change it.
Stearns County is going to be ranked really dangerous every time, just because we've got about 160,000 population. Whereas you get out into Pope and some of these that only have maybe 3,000 in population, they're probably going to be a little low.
I guess there's one other comment, when Dwayne Merrick was on, he was always looking for a prevention thing. Is this a possibility to somehow use this position, instead of, I don't want to say waiting for somebody or catching somebody after the fact, where it can be also a PR, out in the communities, visiting, just kind of reminding, educating,
I think we could do a coordinated effort between this DWI officer, our partnership in the Stearns-Benton Towards Zero Death program, and then Sheriff Soika has been implementing a sheriff's community engagement team. So I think between all three of those, we certainly could increase our educational and prevention measures out in the community.
Yeah, because it seems like on the criminal justice committee, it's doing a lot of collaboration, education, outreach, and maybe there's a chance here too with this grant and position.
Yeah, and we've done some things with school officers, and I know with the prom, with the car crash simulations and things like that. Yeah, this person could help with those as well.
Are you adding staff?
So this, being as this officer is dedicated full-time to DWI officer, we would like to, then because it would kind of tend to short our patrol staff, then we'd like to fill that opening. So, yeah, I would be adding staff.
You're adding staff? Okay. And when the grant disappears?
When the grant disappears, like when we presented last year, our plan would be to speak with county administration to see the best way to offset that. I knew the thing that we could say last year when we presented was that we knew we had a retirement coming up in May of this year, and that deputy did in fact retire. I'm not so certain about 2020. I speculate that we might have one or two in 2021, and we can manage it that way. But we'd have to work more closely with administration to figure out how to do that.
The insinuation to the public, I suspect, is that this officer would be the only one issuing DWI.
That would not be the case.
Yeah, see, and I'm wondering, because they're all trained in it, so, and for some of them, drives them nuts because it takes so much time. But the punchline is yeah, if we're criticized for duplication, I think that's a criticism that's appropriate. But let's give it a shot, try it out, see what happens.
Mr. Chair. I was going to say, my two questions are just to reinforce the prevention aspect, and I think that you've been working on a number of initiatives with that, and as Commissioner Notch was talking about, I think with some of the work we're doing with our community partners within our Criminal Justice Advisory Board, there may be some additional opportunities, and I think that obtaining these funds will be important, but then us being thoughtful if we get them, how we are going to make sure what the impact on the budget and how we continue to communicate that our deputies are out there doing work on this. This is going to provide us additional resources. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Clark.
Okay, we'll look for a motion on that then?
We have a
We
motion.
got it. Well, then let's take the vote.
And we're getting a 6-month report.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay.
All right, our second item on the agenda was originally going to be presented by Chief Deputy Miller. Unfortunately, the Chief Deputy was called to court up in Duluth, so you are once again stuck with me. Also Sheriff Soika, and we have
Ole tweeted. He was going to put you on the last
Attorney's office. I had the first name, I blanked on the last name momentarily. But this is another grant opportunity. It's a federal grant. It's for a law enforcement-based victim specialist program. It's a grant opportunity that both Chief Deputy Miller and Mr. Tweeden have been working on. And I believe the application was due last Thursday?
Friday.
Friday, okay. But the program here is for a crime victim specialist within law enforcement, in this case our agency, to better support victims through the criminal justice process, including connecting them with community-based victim services programs to more quickly and effectively serve them. So the goal here, if we were lucky enough to be awarded this grant, would be to facilitate that victim contact not only for our agency, but all our other local partners throughout the county too, unfortunately with the exception of the City of St. Cloud. The City of St. Cloud is fortunate enough to have some victim specialists already, namely their most predominant one or prominent one in the CRY program. So while this would be more focused on adult victims of crime, it's somewhat similar to that program in that we're actively and proactively trying to reach out to victims of crime who are sometimes forgotten in the criminal justice process, to let them know what their rights are, what their avenues are, what other orders they might be able to seek depending on the situation, as if it were a domestic, an OFP or an HRO or something like that. So this is a 3-year grant opportunity. It would fund the position at $92,000 a year for those 3 years. As such, I've kind of got a high-level understanding of the program since I haven't been involved with it, and I will ask Mr. Tweeden to fill in anything that I've missed along with Sheriff Soika.
I don't want to step on the sheriff's toes, so.
Well, I had asked the chief deputy to apply for this grant because one thing I believe our sheriff's office has been lacking at times has been just a continuity with the victims. Being that we're on shift work. A deputy might take a domestic at 2 o'clock in the morning, and then that victim's looking for some answers the next day, and that deputy's sleeping home, or he's off, or whatever. So one of these things that this would allow us is just to have much more contact with the victims to help them through the process prior to them getting to the courts and the charging portion of it. There's basically three components to this. One would be establishing contacts with the Anna Maries and those type of things, and developing a much better working relationship with them, which I think we're already on our road to doing. Number two would be education for our patrol officers whenever something changes. This particular officer would be trauma-informed trained, which is a different and new way of interviewing victims that currently we're trying to get our department through. It's just, with the amount of deputies, it's a little time-consuming. But this would be what I envision more of a plainclothes, softer approach to approach the victims, to meet with them a day or two after maybe a domestic where, sometimes for unfortunate purposes, the bruises are much more pronounced. They might be a little more likely to talk to us, and to help them through the process. Most of it centers around domestic violence. Obviously, we have a domestic violence court. This would definitely bolster some of that. But I do envision that this could work into other victims of crimes, especially with those that have some questions or maybe don't understand. We just recently had a case, more of a damage to property, slight domestic thing, but there was a lot of misunderstanding on the victim's behalf on obviously people think we can just go out and arrest people, and we need probable cause and things like that, and they don't quite always understand that. So this would be somebody that I would envision in a softer approach, plain clothes, assigned to our investigative division under the investigators, and be able to be more approachable and just work with the victims a lot more.
Mr. Clark?
I'd like to move approval, and then we get to discussion a couple of things.
Yeah, I'll second
And a
that.
second discussion?
Actually, I think thank you. This is really great. I think that, at least for me, be kind of similar to last time. Can you come back if we get this in 6 months and do an update? And then 3 years gives us a bit more flexibility on planning. But just, again, the how we're planning and the prevention piece also fits very well. But I think for those entities that we've been partnering with, this could help us move really to that next level. So thank you.
I'll echo that. We have issues, sexual assault, just assault, domestic issues, issues involving children, and this will help bridge that gap. I mean, like you say, oftentimes the officer's removed, and, it's been a long time, and they go on to other things. Well, this will be some follow-up that the victims can get some security and some help from, so.
Makes more sense in the first request. Been at this a while, and in some respects, you do tend to get cynical. And the first request smells a lot like a grandstanding legislative initiative that operates under the assumption that nothing gets done. But you got your approval, and anyway.
Other discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
Okay, we'll move on to environmental services.
Good morning, Shelley Benson, Environmental Services Director, and I have Becky Schlorf, who will go through your first item.
Good morning, Commissioners. We also have Cora Lowen with us. So this first item is for your approval to sign a subcontract that will reimburse us for our time. It is a Phase 1 project with the Mississippi River, St. Cloud, to begin the process again of evaluating the watershed, and which will develop a plan, which will be Phase 2, and it will play a role into our county water plan, which is taking on and combining all of these sources. So this was an item before you several years ago, so this is the second time around for this watershed. And Cole is here too to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second to approve the watershed contract. Any other discussion on it? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
The next item we have is a plat, and Heidi Winskowski is here to go through that item with you.
Morning.
Good morning.
We have a plat entitled Thomas W. Edition, consisting of 3 residential lots and 1 outlot, submitted by Rock and Gale Ruland of Richmond. This is located in Eden Lake Township on Long Lake. Eden Lake Township did approve the final plat on July 9th of this year, and the County Planning Commission reviewed and approved the preliminary plat on October 18th of 2018, with several conditions that are listed in your packet. All of those conditions have been met. So we ask the board today to concur with the Planning Commission and approve the final plat.
Move to approve.
Motion?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Notch. Any questions about that? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, and it's like the parade of staff today.
Okay.
Since Angie isn't here, that's why we have a couple of other staff persons. So Nick Newman is here to go through item I3, which is the Lloyd Mortensen conditional use permit request.
Good morning.
Morning.
So as Shelley mentioned, this is it's a major shoreline alteration permit application submitted by Lloyd Mortensen. This item was heard by the Planning Commission on July 18th and recommended for approval. The proposal includes 566 cubic yards of excavation and fill material and 2 separate retaining walls. One retaining wall at 163 feet long and 6.5 feet tall, and another one at 58 feet long by 4 feet tall. There was discussion about another project that started taking place on the property without a permit. We did receive the after-the-fact permit application, and that was approved on Friday of last week. That needed to be taken care of before this item was addressed. So with that being approved, we then look for approval as recommended by the Planning Commission and to adopt the Planning Commission findings of fact for this item.
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay. With discussion, I'll tell you what, I've got a number of issues I'd like to discuss on this project. The first one being is that we had a violation of a minor shoreline prior to this. And that doesn't sit well with me in that I think we've had a couple of those in the past. And, you know, this shouldn't be happening because we have contractors that know what the rules are. And they should not be going ahead and doing work unless they have that permit, especially on the shoreline. And I think that's got to be taken and treated very seriously. Because if it's an after the fact and they pay a $500 late fee payment on after the fact, that can just become, you know, the price of doing business. And that's not what we want to be see happening here. I think a year or two ago, we had somebody that dumped an entire front of sand on a lake property. And we just said, well, it's too much of a burden to have them remove that sand. But the damage was done, and again, these people are supposed to be certified, and they're supposed to have that permit before that work happens. And I talking with the folks on the Planning Commission, they also concur that there needs to be somewhat of a stiffer penalty or accountability for people that are doing work on the shoreline when they shouldn't be doing it unapproved.
So, Mr. Chair, are you, I guess my comment to that, should something not only fall on the homeowner, should it fall under, because these contractors have to get licensed to do shoreline alterations. Should there be, you know, also a charge to them, or maybe there is and we just don't know because, you know, because there's really, even more so than a homeowner, should be, oh, you know, we got to take a step back first, but.
Yeah, and I agree, is that the accountability's got to be there, and just say, well, one of us dropped the ball on it, or was miscommunication, and that was what was told us, is, well, it was just miscommunication. But, I mean, a lot of things can happen. I mean, when you start pouring concrete or putting brick in or dumping fill in, and then who knows what's in there. And there are those people that respect the process, and oftentimes they go about doing what they think is prudent, protecting the shoreline, going through the process, doing what's right. And someone goes ahead and does something without the permit, and we say, well, okay, it's an additional $500. Well, again, to me, that's just, and we had the same thing happen out on the chain where all that rock was removed off the top of a undevelopable lot, in my opinion, and now it becomes a developable lot, and they put a very, very expensive home up there, which otherwise would maybe not have taken place had they not violated the ordinance. I think there's room for discussion here, not necessarily today, but in the future for us to decide how we want to handle violations of the permit. Okay. That's one issue I wanted to bring up. The other issue is if I do not have, I can't get it up on my screen, the pictures of the development here. So we're looking at the property on the screen here. You can see there's a road that comes. Thanks. There's a road that comes down to the property, and then the house sits on an island. This is the road that's coming up into the property. Okay,
there's the island.
There's the island, and so on the end of the peninsula, prior to the bridge, is where they like to put a 6-foot wall on one side, 4-foot wall on the other side, and then bring in the fill. The rationale is that would allow for a turnaround. Having visited the property right now, if you come in and you enter as we're looking here, go to the left, and then back out, you do have the ability to turn around. It was also suggested that this would be allowed for a school bus turnaround. Well, I find that difficult to believe that the school bus would actually come in on a private drive and want to be turning around in down there. Mm-hmm. And especially if it's a private drive, who handles the snow removal? Where opposed to the township, if they were responsible for the snow removal, they would allow for that to happen. But there's also critical stretches prior to coming to this, which I don't think it would be a way that a school bus would approach the property as well. There would be, if it's truly to make a safe turnaround or an improved turnaround, I can't see why, if we take a look on the left-hand side where this slight slope is up, rather than bring in 6 feet of fill, if just a small amount of fill was or material was removed on the left-hand side, that would create an area for if they necessarily need to do a turnaround. So I question too, is there an alternative motive for we build up this lot, now do we place a building on it? And that would be my concern, is because as far as the impact on the lake and impact on the environment would be much greater if that was to happen later, as well as putting in the 6-foot walls and bringing in the 500 cubic yards of fill.
So in this picture, where is the fill? Where would the fill go?
So, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, the fill is proposed in this location here. The long retaining wall is proposed along the closest to the lakeside here, with the shorter wall over here. And this area would all be filled up against this retaining wall.
So I presume coming, let's say, from the right-hand side of that photo, does that go downhill then at a slight?
The contour kind of follows the lake.
Oh, there you mark it there.
I just wanted to address the issue of school buses coming on private drives. And we ran a daycare at our home, and we had school buses come into our private drive for years to pick up, especially preschool kids. So they came in, turned around right in our driveway.
Were you obligated to provide snow removal?
We did.
Okay.
There was never a court-ordered one to do it.
Commissioner Clark?
Question for Nick. I know that you and Greg Berg did a review together. Was there any particular recommendations that came out from the Soil and Water Conservation District? I really appreciate the coordinated work you do.
Sure. Mr. Chair, Commissioner Clark, when Greg Berg and I did meet on site, one potential recommendation Greg Berg had as a potential alternative, and we had spoke to the property owner about this as well, is to, instead of having a 6.5-foot high retaining wall on this side here.
Pull their slide down a little bit.
Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. To move the wall closer this way, there is a telephone pole, not able to see here that they're looking at moving, but to move this retaining wall to the left here would reduce the amount of fill that would be required to fill behind the wall, and it would not need to be as high. The driveway would then be moved to utilize some of the existing contour and to reduce the wall height and the amount of excavation and fill. That was one potential alternative that.
And it sounds like they decided they didn't want to go that approach because that's not what's in front of us. Does their current approach have anything that takes into consideration things that you might have come up with?
Nope. Their original proposal is what they went ahead with after any recommendations that we had.
Okay, thank you.
Well, we have a motion and a second on the project as is. I'm not supportive of the project as is. We could ask for a separate public hearing on it, if possible. Otherwise, we can go ahead and approve it as is. So I'll call the question on the as is unless there's any more discussion.
Is there a motion?
There is.
Yep.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Aye. Motion passes.
Got a bunch of these in Fairhaven Township, roads that were established. Well, there might be roads in there that before we were even a county.
Okay.
And the last item we have for you is a rezoning request, and Jennifer Buckentine is here to review that item with you.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is a request to rezone, submitted by Mark Martini of Avon. The request is to rezone 20 acres from agricultural 40 to residential 10. This property is in Section 20 of St. Wendell Township. The township did review it and recommended approval. And the County Planning Commission conducted a public hearing June 24th, also recommended approval unanimously. They established the following findings of fact in their review. They felt it does conform with the county's comprehensive plan. They felt it's compatible with present and future land uses in the area. The LISA score was low. They did note it's not compatible with the surrounding zoning, as it's surrounded by agricultural 40 zoning. The property is currently not in compliance with Section 6.30 of the county ordinance due to having a lot of junk and salvage vehicles out there. I will note, though, staff did a site visit with the property owner July 2nd, and that issue has been resolved. The vehicles that remain on the property are all licensed, and they're the owner's own licensed vehicles. They felt that the request would not have public health, safety, or traffic generation impacts, nor would it impact existing public services and facilities. I wanted to point out the maps that Shelley was showing are the correct rendition of the request. The map that was part of the ordinance is incorrect. That shows the whole 40, so we'll be swapping that map out before the ordinance gets recorded. So with that, we would recommend that the board concur with the Planning Commission's recommendation to approve the rezoning and adopt Ordinance 589. And if you would not concur, typically it's been your practice to hold your own hearing.
Okay.
I'll move approval.
Got a motion to approve?
I'll second.
Second. Discussion, I have just a question. Has staff been out to the property to see that the corrections have been made as far as removal of all that debris in those vehicles? I mean, I know that was a concern.
Yeah, correct, Mr. Chair, I have another map here. Heidi did meet with the property owner early July, and she noted, and I've got photos in here as well, I could show if you'd like, but these vehicles have all been removed, these and this.
There are remaining vehicles in this area, and as I noted, the property owner has about 20 of their own licensed vehicles that remain. But this area has been cleaned.
Okay, I'm pleased to see that, okay. Other questions? If not, all those in favor,
Just a quick question. So is that is he a repair shop, or do you know?
I don't know that, Mr. Chair. Heidi knows that.
Okay.
I think it was more of a hobby shop, but
Oh, is it?
a large hobby.
Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes.
That one was yours. And that's all we had, unless you had additional questions.
Questions?
Just stick around after the
Okay.
end of the agenda.
I guess the other thing I was going to bring up back at issues by commissioners, I think we should take a look at that shoreline, those violations, and see if we can tweak our ordinance. I don't know if that comes by when we do a regular ordinance, but that should be something that should not be happening in the county. That is-
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
are you also talking about what Commissioner Notch was bringing up and we've talked about before? Is there something that we should be looking at on the side of the contractor? Since we don't currently seem to do that unless it has to do with licensing. I mean, denying a license seems like a really harsh consequence, so is there something different?
Yeah, or 5-day suspension, or.
Yeah, what is, yeah, exactly. What are some options here?
Yeah.
We bond in those situations?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, we'll
I
bring
would imagine
some options.
If
Yeah.
if we would wind up drawing on a couple bonds that would ripple through the industry fairly quickly.
Mhm.
So, relative to enforcement, maybe that's our tool. Kick it upstairs to Lottie and, get an opinion from her.
And these contractors go through a class, they're certified, and they should know what they should and shouldn't be able to be doing down there. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Randy, we're moving on to you, I believe.
Yes, with me today is Sarah Utsch, our finance director, and Jeff Swenson. This is our annual fee review, and with that, I'll turn it over to them.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Again, Sarah Utsch, Finance Director, and Jeff Swenson, Accounting Supervisor out of the Auditor Treasurer's Office. We are before you this morning to request a public hearing be set to look at the fee changes to become effective on January 2020. The Auditor Treasurer's Office does perform a detailed review of about 25% of the department's fee schedules each year. And this year, our detailed review was over the Public Works Department and the Auditor Treasurer's Office. We also do at that time give the opportunity to all departments to propose any changes that they would suggest. And so in your board packet, the information begins on page 488. And at this time, I can go over some changes, or if you'd like me to do that at the time of the public hearing, I can do that as well.
What's the wishes of the board?
Let's do it at the public hearing.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, this is the old argument of trying to determine what's appropriate for general funding versus benefit to the individual, and there's no right answer, Obviously, various departments want to recover costs, but sometimes that's just not feasible.
Okay, good. Anything else?
We do need a motion to set the public hearing.
Then let's have that motion.
So moved.
I made the
Need a
motion.
second. You made a motion, I'll
Okay,
second
somebody
it.
made the
There you
motion.
go.
Okay, we have a
I think you
motion
made
and a
a
second,
motion.
one or the other. But we have two.
Weak coffee, memory loss.
All right, if he made the motion, I'll second.
Okay, good. All right, any discussion on that? Okay, I agree with you, Lee, we should wait until that time. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Anything else?
Thank you.
On that note, Randy, and everything else on that?
No, I do
Otherwise,
not.
we'll go to issues by commissioner, and we'll start at your end, Randy.
I don't have anything.
Commissioner Notch.
Just to state, the fair starts tomorrow, and I think most of us will be there at some point, during the next few days. Yeah, other than that, I think we have a dairy advisory meeting coming up too in a couple of weeks.
I think we
so
do. Next week, I think.
The week after.
Week after, okay.
Okay, Lee?
Thanks for the department coverage on the fair. I think that's a good utilization of the opportunity. I should have brought this up when we were doing the consent agenda. Number 14 is root damage. I take it, no, trail pavement replacement. I take it that was root damage, but I'll call the park department and make sure about that. And then you were asking about prison guards. And I know it's hard to believe, but those of us that had that experience, after I worked the shift that was afternoon, so we got off at 11:30. And the prison back then in close proximity was an American Legion. And so after the shift was over, we'd go over there and do professional reviews. And at one review, we came up with a job description of a prison guard. And what we came up with is we decided that we were watching people watch you watch them.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That's happening.
That's as good as I can do.
Okay.
I have nothing.
Commissioner Clark.
Got a chance to go on the soil and water conservation tour last week, and it was, just like the other one that most of us went on, it was both informative. It's for the public. It's like grown-up field trips. But especially seeing recent things that have been being done, whether it's working with an owner on a wetland conversion. This one happened to be mostly about soil erosion and restoration, which is why it was timely for today. But really looking at the differences with what's happening with shorelines for property owners who are working with them versus some of whom are not. And the more that we can be getting the word out on simple things people can do. But for those who don't know, there actually is a fair amount of resources available to property owners at what is pretty minimal on the property owner side. So, as our townships and our lake associations are looking at the comprehensive plan as we're working with them, hopefully they're really looking and seeking out what opportunities can be perhaps more positive in the long run for both the property owners and for our lake restoration.
Sure, good. Mike?
I'll just make a comment. Commissioner Lensmeyer mentioned damage to our website. Well, the word I really want to use is defacement of our website. It wasn't hacked, so our information and data wasn't necessarily compromised. This is at least the most recent report I have. It's really almost like a redirection. When someone clicked on our URL, it took them to another page that was highly inappropriate photo and words. But so that happened in the middle of the night, and I think our website is back up and working just fine today and this morning. So.
Okay.
But it really wasn't, I don't want to use the word hacked because I think that makes it sound like someone was in there and messing around with our data. It was more like just redirecting almost is really what it is.
A little graffiti.
Yes, graffiti is another good way to put it.
Well, and as someone who in a different point in time, about 10 years ago, I had a site that was defaced or redirected to an incredibly awful, inappropriate site, and it was offshore folks, and it was really a big challenge to figure out what you could do about that. So thankful that we've got staff able to figure out how to make these things get
If I hear
fixed.
anything different, I will let you know, but that's what I know right now.
Okay. I just have a couple items. First of all, an invitation to everybody to come out to the Fair and Sauk Center. It's a chance to see the commissioners here. Also appreciate Shelley Benson being out there with the booth, working on a comprehensive plan. So if you have ideas about helping us to be a better county, by all means, stop by and see us and let us know. And we welcome your opinion for the most part.
Oh,
because sometimes those opinions can hurt a little bit. Also, looking forward, August 14th, we have a park board meeting also at Mississippi River Park with the Park Commission and the board members that are invited as well. We have an exciting program that's hopefully going to move forward with the archery barn out there, $500,000 project. Get a chance to witness to the drawdown that's taking place. Folks that are not aware of, the plug is going to be pulled up at Sartell and dropped 3 feet, and so in a couple of days you're going to see a dramatic change in some areas as far as the water level is concerned. And of course we're looking forward to the ability for us to clean up the river on this Stearns County side, and hoping to improve things, especially in Benton County up at Little Rock Lake, to improve the quality of water with some plantings there. So please take advantage as far as getting some of the necessary debris out of the river when we have this chance, and just see what's going to happen with that drawdown. And then also the piece of property north of our Mississippi River Park is becoming available for sale, and we may have some opportunities there as far as the DNR or Trust for Public Lands at helping us acquire that property should we want to maybe go in that direction. So we'll be looking at that. So hopefully we'll get a good attendance between our board and the Park Commission and other folks that might want to see that. So with that, I'll look for a motion to adjourn today.
Okay.
Commissioner
May I
Notch.
just add one more thing?
Oh, sure.
Before you get that
One more thing. Is this,
You know, and I should have asked this when Melissa was here, but I didn't find it fast enough. You know, going back to the Community Corrections Advisory Board, you know, at the beginning of the year, there were, 3 openings, my district, District 2, and then there was one other vacancy. And I know, just in the meetings I've attended, I believe Tom has retired. There's been a couple more turnover on there. But, it's very interesting because it's a diverse group of law enforcement, human services, agencies working, to be in front of some of these issues. So, my hope is, maybe I can find somebody from District 5. I'm not sure if District 2 was filled.
And I actually got clarification while we were sitting here. It actually isn't a district opening, it's an education opening. It isn't a specific, I think it just got a little confusing. I was confused, and so just so we know, it's an education. It's a school district.
Oh, so the other ones are filled?
That's what it sounds like, but I was personally, maybe what we could do is ask them just to give us all a list of what the openings are so that we can really all go out and keep asking people to participate, because it's much richer when we have people from our community or from our communities in our county participating.
Okay, that's all I have.
all right, thank you.
Thanks. Well, I'll make the motion.
Okay.
I'll second.
A motion, a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. We are adjourned.